set up a student as a producer project with IATL. This is about 5 years ago now. And I asked for a group of students to be kind of volunteers to source materials for local schools in the UK to enhance language learning. So I kind of got the idea that perhaps we could, by getting students who are so close in age to the school pupils to show what opportunities there are if you learn a language, for travelling, for learning about a new culture. So we set up this student as producer project, and we had about 12 students on that. And it was a bit vague, to be honest, but it was kind of, I thought it would be great if they acted as kind of teacher eyes and ears, and they could go out there and think about, what might interest school children that they'd seen and how they might present it to them. So it's quite an open-ended project. They did really well. We struggled, to be honest, to make teaching resources because the one teacher contact that we had left the project. So we didn't have somebody who we had a strong, who had a strong basis in schools teaching, but we had various advisors who helped us a bit, and we tried to gather resources, and the students gathered resources in about 5 or 6 key areas. But one thing that was really noticeable about that first cohort was that they were so self-motivated by the idea that it was their responsibility to go out there and be the eyes and ears for school pupils. And they'd all had fairly, they were by and large state school educated students who'd had very good teachers, but felt that actually the syllabus wasn't very good, it wasn't very stimulating. Often they'd come into languages because of one inspirational teacher, for instance. So there were a couple of them who were students at the Sorbonne, and they threw themselves into educational kind of research projects. They got themselves into conferences on education, and they wrote little reports on the conferences. And 2 of them even ended up doing a kind of Ministry of Education report with some other Erasmus students on being a student in France and the whole intercultural, being an international student, which they linked into the project. One of the French history students went and taught in a prison in France, taught English in a prison, and produced a whole load of resources about prison life in France, overcrowding, issues of whether, in fact, very commonly people looked at the issue of the death penalty, but it wasn't about that anymore. It was about incarceration and what you did with people, and produced some lovely resources. Some of them got very into primary school resources because they were teaching in French primary schools, and they asked their host families, what do children like over here? How can I present something? So they produced a set of resources, cartoons and so on, which we've used since actually in recruitment, in open days, this kind of thing.